Good scientific afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our very first ever Zoom link to YouTube. We are going to be talking today about the carbon cycle and climate change as our very first question and discussion. So, in previous sessions, we've always been solely Zoom, but as a CIC, we wanted to start benefiting the local community even more. And with this, all we're doing, and we'll get live soon, is we are setting up a donation page on our website that we would ask um, anyone that is able to make a donation to make that comment, uh, to make that donation via there instead. Um, just to help us out more than anything. So, with this, we've got four main questions that we should be able to answer by the end of this session, like we always do. What is carbon and why is it important? How does carbon move through ecosystems? What is the greenhouse effect? And how are humans changing Earth's climate? So let's delve into what is carbon first of all. And with looking at what is carbon first of all, let's get up a image for us all to have a look at. So this is generally, if we think carbon periodic table wise, this is the general thing that we would pull up on our screens. And carbon is an element. So we find it on the periodic table of elements. And with this, every living thing known to man contains carbon. By containing carbon as well, um, we every plant, fungus, bacteria on Earth um, contains this. Sorry, my notes are weirdly going a bit on the weird side. Um, and so when we're looking at carbon as an element, we can start to then delve into this concept of everything being made out of it. So if we then look at, for example, the human body, the human body is fascinating as well because we, as a human body, are made up of countless things as well that involve carbon. So if we um, looked at, for example, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and DNA, they all involve carbon. So without carbon, there would be no life as we know it here on Earth. So carbon is classified as the building block of life. Now, there have been films out there in the past where they've talked about having silicon life forms instead. Um, in the comment, tell me if you've ever heard of films involving silicon life forms, yes or no. And with this, um, I'm going to ask you a question, and please write your answers in the chat. Where do we find carbon and what examples are there? So I'll give you just 15 seconds to write in the chat um, examples of carbon in the world. So what can you think of in regards to examples of carbon? Now, with this then, when we're looking at carbon, carbon is literally found everywhere. And when we look at carbon, um, carbon is found in our atmosphere in different types of gases. It's found in plants. If you think of glucose, glucose is made up of 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. We have carbon dioxide gas in the atmosphere. We have animals, like we've already said. There's things living in the oceans. There's stuff in soil. There's fossil fuels. We've got rocks that have carbon in them. We've got literally carbon everywhere. So when we look at how that carbon gets from one location to another, we call it the carbon cycle. Okay, and so the carbon cycle is all about um, how that carbon moves from one compound to a different compound and gets here, there, and everywhere across everything, basically. So, my question then for you, and I'm going to start our first multi-choice question today. And I know in the past on our group sessions, you've been extremely fast with these. So I wonder if you'll be just as fast today. Which statement is correct? Carbon is only found in animals. Carbon is only found underground. Carbon is found in all living things. Carbon only exists in the atmosphere. And straight in there with the correct answer, as always, it is carbon is found in all living things. Um, Now, I could have actually have had this as a multi-choice thing and maybe made this tick all the relevant boxes for which ones are actually um, linked towards it all. But you know, it varies from um, object to object, um, and from every single different like chemical and things like that involved as well. All right. So where we next go then is, well, what is the carbon cycle? There's no point in me uh, talking about the carbon cycle and then not actually um, looking at what it is. So here is, if I didn't shut it, here is an image I made earlier. Uh, so this is a very simple version of the carbon cycle, and with this, this is um, an MC Science exclusive image. So the carbon cycle. So the carbon cycle literally describes how carbon moves through all living and non-living things. And with this, we can then start to look at um, how this occurs. So, over thousands of years, for example, um, unlike energy, which flows through ecosystems, carbon is recycled. And with carbon being recycled, this means the same carbon atoms can be used again and again. And one of the fascinating things that I, on a slight sidetrack, love to talk about here when we're talking about the recycling of carbon is the recycling of water as well. Water always gets recycled. Sometimes it gets split into hydrogen and oxygen and then molded back together. But the very water that is inside you once was inside a dinosaur, just like carbon that is inside you was once inside a dinosaur as well, or once was part of a tree millions of years ago. It was once in the ocean. It was once floating in the atmosphere. So the very carbon that you're built up of was in all of these things as well. And it's fascinating to think about um, that the very materials that built all these things are now in us. So, looking at our diagram here, um, and to think that like carbon and water was once in dinosaurs and now's us, it's always one of the things that makes me like giddy and stuff like that and fascinated. So, we literally um, we'll look at today, obviously not in huge amounts of depth, but we've got photosynthesis, we've got feeding, we've got respiration, decomposition, fossilization, and combustion, all of which are really important um, areas to look at. And when we start to think about even like photosynthesis, which I'm hoping you have some sort of knowledge of photosynthesis, we have covered it in previous videos, but for those that are joining us for the first time today, photosynthesis, plants, trees, grass, algae, um, all take carbon dioxide from our atmosphere. By taking the carbon dioxide from our atmosphere, using sunlight as the energy source, they convert it into glucose, and we can see it here. Carbon dioxide plus water makes glucose and oxygen. So, why is this an important thing? Well, plants are acting like giant carbon collectors. They remove that carbon dioxide from the air and store it as carbon inside their tissues. This is actually how trees grow. One of the things you'll notice is when you look at the soil around a tree, we don't have a tree sat in the middle of like an area and it's like dipped in and like hollowed out and the trees just sat there barren. What you actually have is carbon getting taken from the atmosphere and being put into the trees for them to grow. So this then means that we have less carbon in the atmosphere, more food for ecosystems, and more oxygen being produced, which is brilliant. Why would we as humans not want more oxygen in our atmosphere? So a large oak tree, for example, um, can store carbon for hundreds of years. The woods, leaves, roots all contain carbon. Forests, therefore, act as giant carbon sinks. You know, and a carbon sink is something that absorbs more carbon than it releases. That is the definition. So, my next multi choice question for you all is as follows. And please, again, in the chat, answer accordingly. What gas do plants remove during photosynthesis? And I'm hoping you should all be able to tell me what you believe the answer is. What I do need to probably do is have a bit of a think about this. So in the comments, straight away again in there with the answer. Do comment in our chat on the YouTube live as well. What gas, A, B, C, or D, as you are slightly delayed to the original feed. The answer is carbon dioxide. And this is one of them big things that I can't stress enough because we end up with students not actually realizing or getting it mixed up. And so the reason I put such emphasis on talking about carbon dioxide being absorbed is because so many students in the past have got this the wrong way round, and they'll be like, "Oh, trees take in oxygen," and it's like, no, trees do not take in oxygen; they only take in um, carbon dioxide. So with this, then, if we think back to our um, food chains again, carbon moves through the food chain. And so, and remember, one of our things here, so we've talked about photosynthesis, we're now talking about feeding. So when it comes to feeding, we have our food chains. So the grass um, is eaten by the rabbit is eaten by the fox. That's if the fox can actually catch it, of course. So food chains do not just transfer energy, they also transfer carbon, nutrients, and biomass. And with um, doing biomass as well, obviously, we would see these things kind of grow accordingly. And when we look at that literally, because we've already actually kind of talked about feeding previously, we're not going to delve any more into that. But what I want to now actually do, um, what I now want to do is look at respiration. Now, respiration occurs in all living organisms. Okay, it's one of them things that, again, time and time again, I've seen students forget about. And when it comes to respiration, every living thing respires. Okay, whether it's animals, plants, fungi, bacteria, um, they all respire, and by respiring, they release energy from the food that they take in. They also then release carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. All right. You right now are breathing carbon dioxide out into the atmosphere. Every breath you take, you're taking in some oxygen, you're releasing carbon dioxide. All right. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions, which is why I've put it on here, is that plants respire too, is that plants only photosynthesize. Okay, but plants do respire as well. So, believe it or not, they are kind of actually self-sufficient in some way. Um, During the daytime, they photosynthesize, getting all of their energy as much as they can during sunlight. And during um, the a lot of the time, or in their biggest case, is they are then respiring at night, and with respiring at night, they um, are able to still produce energy, but they take then in the oxygen and release carbon dioxide instead. So plants respire, they do take in. It's not as much as their photosynthesis, but it's a really important thing to remember as well. All right, is about that respiration. And so if I then threw another multi-choice at you, um, fingers on at the ready. The next multi-choice is as so. Which organisms respire? Animals only, plants only, animals and plants, or animals, plants, fungi, and bacteria? And give a few seconds for others to answer as well. And if you have put D down, you would be correct. And again, it's one of them things that, just as a quick reinforcement in the head, the more we talk about it, the more it embeds. Now, if I ask you, do you know what decomposition is? Yes or no? What is decomposition? No idea. That's absolutely fine. And again, always love how honest you are. So decomposition is literally when is what happens, should I say, when plants die. All right. So anything that dies um, is broken down by decomposers. Okay. So our decomposers, um, for example, fungi and bacteria, they start to break all of that dead matter down. Okay. And without decomposers, dead material would start to pile up. If you think about autumn, what do we have lots of in autumn? As another question for you. What do we have lots of in autumn? Dead leaves, exactly that. And with all of them dead leaves or anything like that, um, we end up with um, everything would be piling up. Nutrients wouldn't be recycled. Carbon would be trapped in these organisms. So decomposers release the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere during respiration. So again, um, we've talked about respiration being involved in everything. So a fallen tree eventually rots down. This is part of the reason why if a tree falls, you'll generally see, depending on the location of the tree in regards to where it is around the city, you'll generally see the council chopping it up if it's in an area where it would be blocked on the path kind of thing. So really actually important in regards to it is if a tree falls and we're able to use it for stuff, that's why they get in there quickly. If the tree falls and it's not blocking the path or anything, they will leave it there to rot down and provide habitat for animals and things like that. So this is why if you've ever been around the city or anything like that, and you see a fallen tree in like an area, and you'll be like, why haven't they come along and cleared that up? This is why. If it's not causing any issues to humans, we generally leave it there and go, it'll be all right. Um, Fossil fuels, however, um, one of the biggest things when it comes to fossil fuels is if I asked you what do we get from fossil fuels, what are the main things normally classified as a fossil fuel? Can you tell me? What is classified as a fossil fuel? And here's my drawing of fossil fuel under the ground as a potential hint. Oil, yes. Oil is one of our fossil fuels. We also have got coal and natural gas. So believe it or not, natural gas wise, whenever we've got fossil fuels, there'll always actually be like a little pocket above the life forms that have decomposed. So when the rock and everything has been piling on top and we've got heat over a million years and pressure over a million years, eventually the area that was getting heated and compressed, there'll be a slight void above because natural gas has actually formed in that area. So natural gas I'll just put NG here for the minute. Look at that beautiful handwriting. Um, Natural gas fills this area. And so what we would actually then do is drill a pipe down into it, extract the natural gas as well as extracting the crude oil. All right, and that's what normally happens in this situation. And it could be that it's under sea or anything like that. Now, how if I said to you, how were fossil fuels formed? Could you tell me? Do you know what has caused fossil fuels to form? That's absolutely fine. And again, very honest. If you don't know, you don't know. That's why I'm here teaching you today and going over these kind of things. So, fossil fuels actually formed millions of years ago from either plants, animals, or materials becoming buried. So with this, it depends on the environment that they were buried. So plankton, for example, and that kind of stuff. If there was like a mass amount of air, an area where lots of them suddenly died, this is what we would see. Is the fossil fuels being formed due to them collapsing, then heat and pressure slowly forming over the top and things like that. Um, so we call it fossil fuels when some dead organism millions of years ago did not completely get decomposed by the decomposers, and therefore that animal tissue has been broken down and has become these fossil fuels instead. To which then, looking at our stages, that's what fossilization basically is in a very brief description. Our sixth stage is combustion. If I said to you, do you know what combustion is? What would you say, yes or no? Absolutely fine. Again, that's why I'm here. So, combustion uh, means to burn something. All right. Whenever anything combusts, it's that you are burning it. And so, with the burning of any of these things, um, especially when we're burning fossil fuels, for example, we've got carbon combining with oxygen. This will always produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. All right. So the biggest things that we generally burn on our planet, um, you know, is petrol, diesel, coal, and natural gas. Now, I'm only mentioning these at the minute. There's lots of other things that we burn as well. You know, obviously we burn wood, we burn um, other uh, parts of crude oil and stuff like that as well. But for the minute, I'm just giving them as an example. Now, what is the problem with this? Well, for millions of years, this carbon has been locked up underground. Okay. We have had this carbon being stored in these reservoirs and things like that. And what we then find is that humans are releasing it back into the atmosphere extremely quick. So, this is one of these things where people generally get mixed up and get confused between, well, what, there's Earth's natural cycles where, and there's a natural greenhouse effect on the planet where greenhouse gases are produced and we increase and decrease accordingly. But the biggest issue is when we're looking at um, burning of fossil fuels is the speed that we're releasing all this carbon back into the atmosphere. And so we've got fossil fuels storing all this carbon, combustion releasing the carbon as carbon dioxide. Carbon is then entering the atmosphere. The atmospheric carbon dioxide levels are increasing, and this is where greenhouse effect gets amplified. So the greenhouse effect is in a natural thing. So I'm making that adamantly clear. The greenhouse effect is a natural thing. All right. But without it, the Earth would actually be at about negative 18 degrees Celsius. So most of our life would struggle to survive. If not, most things would probably die. Humans would probably build some sort of bunker and things like that and hide away in them. But basically, what happens is, and I'm going to do some beautiful drawing for you now. I'm going to use green on the basis of we're talking about greenhouse gases and everything. So we've got our atmosphere. All right. And then because the planet is normally called a blue planet, we are normally referred to as the blue planet. There we go. Well, here's our oceans, for example. And I'll throw a bit of land there, and there's a bit of land there. Look at that. Artistic skills to perfection. Um, so what normally happens is we have sunlight. Sunlight is a type of radiation, and it enters into the atmosphere. Now, some of the energy, the sunlight, hits the atmosphere and pings off. Okay, that's natural. Some of it is going to come in contact with the atmosphere and ping off in a different direction. But the stuff that doesn't normally then hits the surface of the planet and gets absorbed. Okay, so there we go. It's absorbing into the planet. All right, and some of it, however, oh, I've changed my color. Some of it reflects off of the planet into the atmosphere. All right, and other parts of it, I'm going to try and change the color again. Other parts of it actually reflects off fully out of the atmosphere. All right. This is what is happening all the time with energy from the sun. Some of it's reflecting off the atmosphere, some of it's coming through, getting absorbed by the surface of the planet. Some of it's getting reflected back into the atmosphere, and some of it's being reflected off out of our planet completely. Now, this normally, like I said, the planet would, if it wasn't for this, would then be super cold. So with it entering, it heats up the environment. Now, what humans are causing is we've got three main greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases exhibit eh, are carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor. So carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor then are floating around in the atmosphere. With the carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor floating around in our atmosphere, well, that tangles up this long waves of radiation. With tangling it up, it's keeping all that heat in the area. And with keeping all of that heat in the area, the temperature of the planet then starts to increase as well. All right. And I'm just suddenly had a idea. There we go. Oh, and then I drew on it. No, I want my picture back. bear with me. Right. Eh, eh. And then let's move there. There we go. So the temperature of the planet then increases. And with the temperature of the planet increasing, this is where we go into climate change. Okay, so climate change is the long-term change in Earth's climate patterns. Okay, this is where scientists have observed the rise in global temperature, hence my little thermometer that I quickly threw there, melting of glacier ice. So this is ice water that has been stored um, on land, and that land water is then trickling off into the oceans. Now, some of you might be like, well, it was in the oceans originally. What's the problem with that? Now, what happens is we've got salt water in our oceans, okay? And this salt water is quite a dense water. What we then have is this fresh water, because it's less dense and hasn't had time to mix with the salt water yet. It comes and sits on top of the actual salt water because it's less dense, sitting on top, like oil sitting on top of water. Now, the issue here is the animals that have always survived in seawater now have to swim up through this layer of fresh water, and it can kill them because they're not developed and designed to live in fresh water. So by us having this fresh water on top of seawater, these are the things that start to change and have as an issue. Eventually, this will mix up and all become one thing, but it actually ends up then more diluted. So the salt levels, if all of that fresh water's there, is breaking down. And if we have less fresh water on land, well, then we're going to have to find ways of getting fresh water as well. So Arctic sea ice is shrinking. This is affecting polar bears, seals, the Arctic food webs. You know, polar bears are use sea ice to hunt for seals. If they haven't got all of this, well, it means they've got less opportunity to hunt. And there's absolute incredible, obviously, some incredible work done by David Attenborough explaining all of this. And I highly recommend, if you haven't watched David Attenborough series, do get in there and watch them. So we've got Arctic sea ice shrinking. Okay, we've got warmer oceans because we're trapping in all of that thermal energy, and with that, then that means our oceans are getting warmer. If the oceans are getting warmer, the algae that live in the water then start bleaching. And let me get a picture of that. So algae is meant to be beautiful, colorful coral. Sorry, it's meant to be beautiful, colorful stuff, but it's bleaching white because of human intervention. Okay, this isn't just a madman on YouTube talking. This is science. This is fact. We know coral bleaching is occurring because the algae is being lost and it's been turning white. And without intervention, they generally die. Okay, many fish depend on this coral to survive. And we then have as well forest fires occurring here, there, and everywhere. And as you know, more and more at the minute on our planet, these kind of things are occurring. And one of the biggest things that people don't realize is that it's because of things like deforestation. By us cutting trees down, especially the Amazon rainforest, um, by us cutting this down, the trees are not releasing as much moisture into the air. If there's less moisture in the air is drier. Therefore, areas that need that moisture to come along over to it causes things to ignite much faster because it's drier. And this is again, we destroy habitat, we release stored carbon, and we reduce biodiversity. So my question then for you is well, what can humans do about this? So scientists themselves are working extremely hard to come up with ways of improving this issue. And we ourselves can start looking then at other things like renewable energy, solar power, wind power, hydroelectric power produce far less carbon and have a much lower carbon footprint on the planet. Okay, by us reforesting areas, okay, so not just cutting all the woodlands down and then being like, it's now a large field instead. What we're able to do is then replant. And there are some humongous events going on across the planet. Uh, and they are calling it, for example, the Green Belt projects, um, where basically they're in Africa and in other cities and countries as well. I know they're doing it in China as well. They are literally pushing back what we call deserts and stuff like that. So what they are doing is planting rows and rows of trees, and the idea is that they will then I want to choose green. They will then build another row of trees here, and then they'll build another row of trees, and they'll just keep building row after row of trees further and further away from their area to increase moisture levels in the area, reduce the level of wind, and cause these kind of things to push back. So in Africa, particularly, loads of countries have come together and they are building a giant row of trees across the entire planet. They're also putting in a whole load of other things that actually prevent sand and soil and stuff like that moving to allow plant life to survive better in these areas. Now, when we look at what we can do in our homes, well, we need to, as people locally, we need to look at sustainable living. We need to be reducing our waste. You know, do you need 15, 20 pairs of shoes? Probably not. Do you need all the other bits and bobs? Probably not. Sustainable living is about making sure you're recycling, you're using public transport when possible, or I will add, and I will just write it here quickly, or car sharing. Okay. Car sharing is really good. I used to car share to my job and drive a load of people to the school that I worked at in Totnes. And I used to literally drive from Plymouth to Totnes every day and take a load of people in my car. So car sharing's a really good option. Obviously using push bikes as well. Cycling, it massively reduces the carbon footprint and things like that. So these are all examples of ways that you can, by using energy saving light bulbs, by using energy saving devices, by switching stuff off when not in use. And that doesn't mean putting it on standby, because that is still on and running stuff in the background. Actually switching it off at the wall. These small actions by millions and billions of people on our planet make a huge difference. Now, if you are new to our sessions, one of the things that I will like to point out as well is I love to do a little bit of history as well. And we look at history, geography, and careers in each of our sessions as well. So, a little bit of history for you. Scientists first discovered the greenhouse effect in the 1800s. Eunice Newton-Foote and John Tyndall, or Tyndall, or you tell me how you think that's pronounced, contributed to this work. Their work showed that certain gases trap heat, and today climate scientists, still studied by thousands of scientists worldwide, work on this as well. Now, in regards to career, you could become a climate scientist, and if you're someone who would be interested in this, this is what you would need. So you would need your GCSE science and maths. You would need A-level biology, chemistry, physics, or geography. I do recommend sometimes having that little bit of geography. And you would then go on to a degree in environmental science, climate science, or meteorology. In the UK, a starting salary is generally about 28,000 and going on to 35,000. And as you get more experienced, you would then go 45 to 70,000 plus. Now, the reason I put the plus there is because it's also down to the company you work for and who pays you more and things like that, or your actual role, how high up you go. You can as well, just as a little bit of at-home fun, I do also like to recommend practicals and stuff like that that you can do at home as just a little thing. So a little thing you can do at home is called the carbon cycle role play. Assign each stage: atmosphere, plant, rabbit, fox, decomposer, fossil fuel, to different people and things like that. And you can basically tell me how all this works. And there's a little extension task for this as well. I would highly recommend doing this extension task: how carbon enters into a plant, how carbon moves, how carbon returns to the atmosphere. Now, a couple of questions that I will then leave you on. These are called my curiosity questions. And when it comes to our curiosity questions, it's little questions that you can walk away. In fact, hold on, bear with me. In fact, before I do the curiosity questions, I'm going to do the keywords of today's session, because it's important for you lot to have the keywords. So today we have talked about carbon, carbon cycle, photosynthesis, respiration, decomposition, fossil fuels, combustion, greenhouse effect, climate change, carbon sink. Real world wise, if you are wondering how this topic links to real world discussions, real world is climate change, renewable energy, deforestation, ocean health, and sustainable living. And my curiosity questions are as follows. Now, if you are not a follower of our YouTube page, please do follow us for us to continue growing as a business and supporting you all. And our curiosity questions are here. Could Earth become too warm for some species to survive? What would happen if all forests disappeared? And could humans live without fossil fuels? And finally, is planting trees enough to stop climate change? Thank you very much for joining us this session. We have another session on Wednesday where we will delve into some chemistry and physics on Friday. And again, if you are not a follower of our YouTube channel, please do subscribe and we will continue growing these videos more and more. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I will see you all next time.